Kim Possible, hero, cheerleader. Mary Sue? Kim Possible is a classic Disney cartoon that came out in 2002. Wow, if I had watched this while it was coming out, I'd probably be feeling really old right now. As you may have noticed, between the internet, a slew of controversial movies and TV shows, and people fighting with the nostalgia they look back on their childhood with, a thought occurred to me. Kim Possible's tagline is, "She can do anything." But a big part of the criticism of characters like Ray Last Name is the idea that they are bad because they are Mary Sues, which a lot of people attribute to their overly capable natures. So I've decided to look back upon Kim Possible, a show whose premise is basically, let's watch this teenage girl be extremely overpowered, and ask, is this the same thing people have been complaining about? Now, it's important to determine exactly what metric we are using to determine what a Mary Sue is. Because like a lot of words people use to criticize things, a lot of people have very different definitions. And some of those definitions involves attributing traits to Mary Sues that can also be attributed to just regular main characters. Extremely talented and capable characters dealing with things that you may expect to be beyond their capabilities. That's pretty much every action protagonist. The metric we'll be using is mine, as this is my video. The most important aspect of a Mary Sue to me is that the world bends around them. It's not that a Mary Sue is overpowered, it's that the universe breaks its own rules in order for them to achieve that overpowered status. And that's one of the most important things to note, the rules of the universe. It's why it's so much easier to call a character in a story grounded in reality in Mary Sue than one grounded in fantasy, and why it's so much easier for characters in continuations of stories with established rules to fall into that trap. I mean, just look at the origin of the idea of the Mary Sue, fanfiction, where fans would have to bend reality of an existing show to accommodate what they want to write, usually around an original character. It's not just a power thing, it's a character thing too. Like the sense that every character is bent in a way to make the main character look good. A Mary Sue is nothing without their supporting sycophants. They must always be wrong when compared to the hero, and when the hero is wrong, they must be even more wrong. The only person who can ever properly call out the protagonist is the protagonist. Everyone thinks positively of them, regardless of believability, and if people dislike them, they've either been deceived or are bad people, and anyone who is on their side is portrayed in overly positive ways while their enemies are overly negative. Here's an example. The main character of the remarried Empress, Navier, befriends the woman whose family used to own one of the antagonists as a slave, and she's basically just portrayed as a good person. And the slave that the family abused is just so much worse than her for daring to hold on, let me check my notes. Yes. Escape slavery and become the emperor's favorite concubine. Please note, being a concubine is legal and, if I'm remembering correctly, even expected in the story. I'm simplifying things, of course. The slave in question does do a lot of bad things, but I think you get my point. A Mary Sue isn't just someone who's good at things. A Mary Sue is someone who you can tangibly feel the story stretching around and at best giving you a bullshit explanation. And just because you can explain why the character is overpowered doesn't change the effect they have. No amount of explaining why Ray is so powerful has reduced the criticism of the character. So, teenage girl constantly taking on evil organizations and natural disasters all over the world while still managing to maintain popularity and good grades in school, while doing so taking on armies of henchmen, supervillains, and ninja masters like it's nothing, with the only explanation being that she has cheerleading skills and also mastered 16 forms of kung fu at some point, does sound like a prime example of this. But there is one important thing about Kim Possible to consider. It's a cartoon. Not just that, it's a very unrealistic cartoon. Remember that the universe has to break its rules. But Kim's extreme skill level, even considering that she's considered exceptional within her world, isn't actually that crazy in the story. There are like 5 separate teenage geniuses in her town alone whose accomplishments might actually be more impossible than hers. 2 of them are her little brothers. Actually, being exceptional seems to run in her family's DNA, which I do believe is the canon explanation for her capabilities. Her mom is a brain surgeon, her dad is a rocket scientist, her grandma is an ex-Navy Shaolin monk who she actually can't beat in a fight. Hell, I've talked about in a different video, but by the end of the show, her sidekick, the monkey chosen one, completely outclasses her physically and intellectually. And even before that, there were episodes where he got to shine over her, both on and off the battlefield. The point being that Kim's abilities, while more exceptional than the average exceptional person, is not that far removed from the capabilities of other characters. Hell, I said that one of the explanations for her abilities is that she's a cheerleader, but there are like 6 other girls in her school who are also cheerleaders. And while they may not be as good as she is, the story is not afraid to also portray them as being exceptionally physically capable. I don't think she's even the best at any particular thing in the show besides her level of consistent competence and maybe her agility. And she's almost always portrayed as needing a little oomph to win, usually in the forms of Ron and Rufus. Basically, the tone of the universe and the pervasion of incredible people makes Kim's incredibleness less unbelievable. You may look at Kim and say she is impossibly skilled and popular with little explanation that would make sense in the real world and conclude that that makes her Mary Sue. But such metrics are defined by the world the characters existed. That's why we have entirely different ideas for what is considered fatal in Game of Thrones and Tokyo Revengers. Though oddly enough, I think Arya surviving this would be considered egregious in both. For the exception that proves the rule, let's look at when the show did make her Mary Sue. The Team Impossible episode makes the mistake of bringing realism into the story in the form of the idea of expenses and money in order for Kim to teach a lesson on altruism to a group that technically didn't do anything wrong. They just charge people money for their services. Their biggest crimes are belittling her, interfering with her work by giving all the people who usually give her rides around the world an all-expense paid vacation so they can't do that, and defending their system when we try to hack them. And they're treated as being far more wrong than they actually are. She also beats them up when they catch her breaking into their lair before making them go non-profit. Far as I can tell, it's the most Mary Sue she is in the entire series, and it happens by bending the universe to be more like ours while keeping her position exactly the same. All the episode really accomplished is making me question the number of governmental bodies and reckless scientists in this world who are using this teenage girl for free labor whenever they want security or need a mistake corrected. One thing I think it's important to note about Mary Sue's is that simply having flaws is not enough to wipe away the accusation. If those flaws fail to have significant effect, then they don't matter. That's why so many people roll their eyes when they hear things like clumsy, but never enough to actually be inconvenient on screen, and cares too much. Take Marinette from Miraculous Ladybug, who I think warrants more discussion than simply calling her Mary Sue, but that might be a topic for another video. She has flaws, but the effect on the narrative is almost always minimized. Look at her crush. She had a flaw of being very nervous, weird and invasive around Adrian, but all of her weirdness is either overlooked or never noticed, to the point that Adrian just shrugs off her watching him and his new friend from the bushes in season 6, and when she accidentally gets the girl's prosthetic legs broken, she too shrugs it off. If flaws don't have real consequences, then they're just window dressing. And when they do have consequences, you can't have everyone in the universe get together to assure the character that they didn't do anything wrong. This is why, no matter how impossible it seems, there is a section of people watching season 6 right now who worry that the consequences of her actions will once again be minimized. Of course, this is more egregious in a more narrative-focused show like Miraculous than the episodic Impossible, where conflicts very rarely carry over. Remove the context of both, and Marinette's flaws would be considered to have more of an effect than Kim's because her actions tend to carry over from episode to episode far more easily. While I cannot pretend that all of Kim's flaws are treated appropriately, there are some I find myself thinking of in regard to lasting effects. Like a relationship with Mean Girl Bonnie and the fact that Kim's tendency to be overly competitive worsens their rivalry, even though Bonnie is usually hands down the one in the wrong. And she suffers consequences for it, like losing a competition because they were too busy being petty to each other. There is an episode where Kim gets in trouble for lying to get away from prior engagement, and while it may as well not have happened in the context of most of the other episodes of the show, not only does it exacerbate the conflict in this episode, it actually sticks on how she's treated by the characters and narrative for the rest of it. If Kim tried to publicly humiliate a girl to avoid her getting together with the boy she likes, then tried to sabotage an activity the girl was trying to do with her in an effort to become friends, also to keep her from the boy she likes, with both situations leading to supervillain attacks, I would believe that they could become friends in the end, but I'd also expect the girl to find out and for Kim to have to explain herself and apologize and also really think about how she acts about this boy. You know, the marionette comparisons just come so easy. They both follow the boy they like across the world entirely for personal reasons, but people actually notice that's what Kim's doing and tease her for being jealous, while Marionette's parents still probably think she wanted to go to Shanghai for her uncle's birthday. Alright, let's get back on topic. This video isn't about Marionette.
Next trick.
Now, this isn't a one-size-fits-all thing, of course. There are examples of Marionette's flaws having real consequences that don't get minimized, and Kim's flaws not. But that's because writing quality can fluctuate even when you have the exact same creative team. In general though, the narrative's treatment of Kim's flaws goes against the idea of her being a Mary Sue. And you'll notice that much of that has nothing to do with her combat ability. I've spoken on the importance of things like the world of the story in determining a Mary Sue, but there's also the very nature of the story itself and how the character fits into it. Yorichi from Demon Slayer is supernaturally gifted at swordsmanship, even in comparison to the rest of the story. Like, equalizing their power systems, he makes Gojo look downright normal. And yet, his story isn't about how powerful he is. It's more about how that power doesn't stop him from failing at everything he sets out to do. In that way, his power, one very Mary Sue-ish, fails to make him a Mary Sue. And that's before you consider that in the grand scheme of Demon Slayer, his is really just the story of a guy who died 500 years ago failing to stop the main villain the current protagonists have to fight. So, you must consider the nature of Kim Possible's conflicts. Because while the world-ending drama is a significant part of it, there's also her school life. Now, while Kim may seem like the quintessential popular girl, that doesn't preclude her from having problems. She may finesse her way through physical challenges, but she has a harder time doing so with the more mundane problems being a teenager gives her. The funny thing is, they are exactly the kind of flaws you'd expect out of a teenage cool popular girl with a high value for her popularity and image and a desire to not be embarrassed either by her parents or her best friend slash boyfriend. She's also very dismissive of things considered nerdy. In classic cartoon fashion, she either has to get past these problems or finds the value to them that she was unaware of, which usually turns around to them being surprisingly useful. These traits are pretty consistent across the series and they don't stem from the superhero plot, though they can affect how it concludes. Episode 1, Crush, tells you exactly what kind of story this wants to be, with everyone else expressing surprise that Kim can fight deranged supervillains but is nervous about asking her crush out. Outside her incredible skill level, she's still a normal teenage girl with normal insecurities and interests. Sure, she can ride and escape an exploding snowmobile, but then she goes home, can't convince her parents to buy her a jacket, gets a job, and then gets stressed out that she isn't as good at food service as her sidekick. She can lay an ambush for a supervillain one night, then go home and get into a soulmate prediction quiz fad. She can fly a rocket into space to fight monkey ninjas, then come back down to ask her dad not to baby her. I scanned through the show for this video and there are a lot more things she's bad at than I thought. They all just relate to a more mundane life. And make no mistake, it is the nature of Kim's story that makes this work. In a show with a more action-oriented plotline, these would be mundane, unimportant flaws. Kim Possible emphasizes the importance of her civilian life. It's why part of the joke is that no one she knows in her civilian life really cares about all the superhero stuff, besides maybe her parents complimenting her when she does a good job, and her brothers really wanting to get involved because they're like 10. It's like Saitama, who is exceedingly physically powerful, but has more engaging traits elsewhere, and the story doesn't really focus on his. I feel like it would be disingenuous to call what happens with him fights. And as episodes go on, we get to see her be more and more flawed, with her doing things like getting embarrassed when she doesn't live up to the standards she thinks she has to, either when she gets detention, or when people find out she has embarrassing interests, or when Ron is better than her at cooking. And her flaws can even bleed into her superhero job. She's pretty dismissive of things she has no interest in, which can lead to her getting blindsided. When Dr. Drakken is robbing a video game factory, she's so hung up on wondering why he would even be in a video game factory that she completely glosses over everything about it, including things like Ron telling her it has the most high-tech graphics card in history, which does actually turn out to be completely irrelevant, but in the context of this show is a crazy thing for her to ignore. She's so disinterested in the idea of getting a job as a janitor, she fails to notice that he is a spy training her to take down a weather machine, even though he was so obvious about it. Like, not just to the audience, he straight up tells her that he was being very obvious. Her lack of paying attention to things she's uninterested in can lead to her being blindsided when it turns out to be relevant. I've already commented on her competitiveness, which tends to be either an easy way to goad her or a source of conflict. Really, I could sit here and just list flaws, but I think I've gotten my point across. I haven't even talked about her jealousy, though that's more of a second half of the series trait when the writers really locked into the Kim-Ron endgame. Honestly, Kim being wrong is a surprisingly consistent part of the show's formula. Just among the episodes I looked at, there are like 4 different times she's embarrassed by a member of her family until they hash it out and or she finds out they're far more capable and amazing than she assumed. I would be remiss to not point out that the show does do the everyone likes the main character thing I talked about earlier. There's even a scene where Kim's enemies talk about how they expected better from her after she's caught in a lie, and it's never too egregious. I think. I haven't actually rewatched the whole show. I think the most egregious one was the episode where Kim keeps trying to impress her super genius lab partner Justine, only to find herself falling short because this one-off character is pretty much as accomplished as Kim is in her chosen field. But she does manage to earn her respect somewhat by showing that she read her notes and sort of understood them in a sequence that felt like the writers realized they did not have much runtime left. Kim Possible doesn't have the deepest plots ever, so there is a limit to how her flaws can be written. But I think I've made my case for the nature of her flaws and the effect they have. Sometimes she just straight up fails at what she's doing, like when her brothers fire her as their coach to replace her with an animatronic, or when she gets grounded because she wanted to go to a party, or when she failed to win a contest because she was too busy competing with Bonnie. So, after considering everything from the nature of the world to the nature of her character and how they fit together, I've come to the conclusion that no, Kim Possible wasn't a Mary Sue. She'd probably be one if you put her in a lot of other stories, but the character fits right where she is. Honestly, it fits a lot better than I remember. She's very fun to watch. Kim could so easily be a Mary Sue. On paper, she has all the traits necessary. In another story, she'd easily be the most obnoxious character ever. But not in this story. This story is written in a way that, no matter how skilled and unrealistically overpowered Kim is, not only does she fit right in, but she's able to be an engaging focus of various plotlines where you can genuinely not know if she's going to succeed while also watching her be an awesome action star. Shout out to my patrons, A, Skyman, and Jarg Evolved. What are your thoughts? Do you have any disagreements on how I went about determining what is and isn't a Mary Sue? Is there something about Kim that I missed? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you, and good day.